fight to raise these kinds of difficult questions. And I think the point you're making about who's here, who's not here, Catherine raised it first of all, who's excluded, who's included, and also not, we're speaking from within an academic process which has been hugely generously funded for the Arts and Humanities Research Council, and I say, thank you, AHRC, for recognising that this work needs to be done. It needs to be done looking in on dance, it needs to be looking in on disability issues in relation to dance, and that's fantastic. And if we don't do it in academia is not going away, so dance will just be even less visible in it. So there's part of me that says we need to just keep making sure that dance plays as much of a role within our academic frameworks as any other discipline. And when it gets exciting is when dance partners in the way that we're enjoying in this project, that partners with other disciplines, not because dance becomes then studied by the other discipline, but dance changes the other discipline. And that's where it's really powerful, and that's where I think, if I was to say there's one great outcome already of this project, it's about how we are changing the perception of dance from our colleagues in other disciplines, within law and beyond. So I think that summarises, that's not a very good summary, but it's a sort of scratching away. Just one final thought before we open up again to the floor to say, are we asking the right questions and what is the right way forward? Ruth, is Ruth still here? I think she's gone. But she was it Ruth who said we need to go beyond the tipping point? Yeah. So, okay, so so what's going to take us into the right side? How are we going to get to the right side of that tipping point? So maybe any colleagues around here, have I missed anything that you want to add? Anybody from the floor?
Great.
No, I'll take this.
I really struggle with the tipping point because I feel like in my nearly 15-year career, we've always been at the tipping point where when we haven't just arrived, we're at the tipping point when Kenduko started in 1991. So we've been there and been teetering on the edge for quite a long time, and I think people just need to do some jumping, really. Just need to jump off that tipping point, really. So I think it's, hate that I'm about to use the word bravery, but I think it is a lot about bravery and just throwing ourselves off. And because otherwise, I really think it's up to me, as I can only speak for myself, but up to me as a disabled artist to throw myself off and just see where I land, because otherwise I'll never get off this tipping point.
I have a genuine question that just occurred to me off the back of something that Sarah said. Just does anybody know of any other fora where disability is discussed in relation to another form, another practice, quite in the way that it is here? So disability and music and law and access and methodology, disability and visual arts and law and methodology, or disability and engineering and law and copyright and I don't know. I'm not aware of it. But what makes dance such an intersection where these discussions are happening? I know it is, and I'd be really interested in hearing about the other intersections where that might happen. I'm just not aware of it. And how incredible that is as a model to go to these other places. Anyway, if we can answer that question, and it just should give us the impetus to keep doing what we're doing and jump.
Well, a quick response to that is that Jenny Seeley of Grey Eye just said the other day at another talk we did together that she felt that dance had that opportunity more than theatre, for example, in terms of the casting, in terms of the freedom to a certain extent, even though dance has a little tradition. Contemporary dance particularly is about changing the way we move, finding new, unique ways of moving, and so therefore it should completely embrace and use the peculiarity and the kind of the creative diversity that we have in the room with the various dances we have to make that snowball and just kind of go out. I do think in music there are discussions like this, but they are bound by the practicality of the instrument. They're bound by those discussions around the set framework that they have to work within the piano. They don't change it. And actually it's true that in dance we therefore have this amazing freedom to challenge and put the difference out there as a response to being creative. And it was just something that Sean was saying about medical students and taking them to see more dance. Well, it kind of make them aware in their training, rather. He said, make them aware in their training about awareness and sensitivity to disability. So what if we just have more companies and more disabled artists on the stages, in the public eye, in the public images, in the newspapers, images on TV, images on the internet, live and static? I think that's the way forward in terms of, that's the question about how can these role models, and it's something that I know the conference was looking at, particularly leadership and role models, if they are there, and those medical students see them as part of their daily life, they won't even question the sensitivity that they need to discuss the future career prospect of a disabled person. It won't be a question, it will just be part of that. And I guess for me, our question is, how do we get to that, out of this chicken egg situation, to the situation where it is what we are seeing around us. And just as a reference, as I'm looking at Katie, it reminded me of the Paralympics and the images that we saw in the newspapers around that time that were mirroring the lived experience of so many more people. And I remember the moment coming out of the Paralympic ceremony and the party that happened on the streets around Stratford then, because it was like a Canduga situation where it was just the streets were full of both disabled and non-disabled people. And there was quite an interesting sensation, talking about being a lived experience, that could be the norm to a certain extent. And I guess that's my question, how do we get to this where the public eye's experience of every day is not about minorities, seeing disability as a minority, but seeing it as part of the everyday?
Thank you for inviting me here. I am thinking about informative society, what it's mean. So I think you should define this to reach another level in the law, because now it's a schizophrenic situation. Because there is mental health and some physical health. Is a conference for physical activity through pretending that we are doing, by still that we are doing some exercise. And they call me to learn fit, for example, how to make a measure fitness of people. I find people very shy about body in England, and I don't think that they will be glad that some outlander come and assess them how fit they are. It is not my role, and I think that even in the resources like charities, like Parkinson's organization, for example, they don't like advertise about dance. Nothing. Why? It is if it form informative society. No, for me it is just some negative. I don't make any, no one make a big money, so it is not a problem about some bribes, about some corruption. Everyone have right access what kind of provision should you have. But managers, they are trained. No, I come and I see people that are just ignorant.
Do you have a question?
I think that my question is that there is some level, and if you are thinking about changing this, and in other thing, audience which are coming, I think it is a right formula. What we got, when I participate in opera, after a performance, we are walking between audience, and we enhance them to put some question. And it is not only about how I feel in some role, it is about education, what it means, this image. Yes, and I try to explain and to show some meaning, and then it is catchy because they think, yes, it is interesting, it is good. Different audience, researchers, students, they should put in other questions, and there is something completely different, and it is not good to me, I think, with audience, this conversation.
Thank you. So I think that was a comment about the doubting the efficacy of the post-show again, so thinking about the role of the post-show and the extent to which it's an educative process, or if it's an exchange of ideas process, the role of it. I don't know if anybody here wants to respond to that, or any of the other questions that came up.
My question is about, I'm picking up on the image of jumping, and the question around how do we move on from being on the tipping edge. And I don't know if I identify with the position, but my question from it is, what safety net can you facilitate creating? Could it be that maybe the role of this symposium is to think about the safety net and the jumping? And I'm saying this because from the position of being a dance therapist in the community with people who are fairly vulnerable and use community services that are lacking resources, and in the light of things like the Winterbourne inquiry and the closure of big institutions, what I'm seeing is accessibility being reduced for a lot of people. And in this dream to facilitate independent living and access to things from an empowered place, there is also lack of education in learning what is around and what's possible, and including dance, obviously. And therefore, I have a sense of this need for a safety net for this jump, of a need for that maybe being made of visible experiences for people to recognize what's out there, what's possible. Also, maybe more inclusive schools. You know, it starts very early. I remember somebody in a taxi in Scotland saying to me, "What job do you do?" And I explained what I did, and they said, "Gosh, you know, I was driving somebody around, and they had a disabled child, and I was very embarrassed, and I didn't know what to do." But my daughter, who's in an inclusive school, she was very completely well. She knew what to do. She knew how to be, and so many more of these are needed. Yeah.
I'm going to come back here. So I think we've got some good ideas. Thank you. Thank you all. So we need to jump, but we need some safety nets, or a safety net. And probably it's the stories that we need to tell, because there are some great stories out there. So we need to make sure those stories are told and they're heard and they're seen. We have come to the end. Thank you. Thank you all for contributing so much to today. We are going to be having another event in almost exactly a year's time, another big event. And what's going to be different about the final event is it's going to really be around work. So we're going to be including and looking at work and having work, dance work, practice, very central to it. We were very happy it played such a cool role today as well. And just before we wrap up, I must say thank you again to everybody who's made today possible. Thank you to our supporters here in Siobhan Davis Studios. Thanks to my colleagues from the Centre for Dance Research, Coventry University, who've been helping with all the running around today. I have a little list of people to thank and I've lost it. So who else do I need to thank? Is that it? What else do I need to say? Apart from all of you, of course, and particularly to our speakers, to our panellists, to our performers who've just made today really fabulous for us. Thank you very much. Do stay in touch. We've got a website, we do regular blogging, we've got Facebook, Twitter, and postcards, please. If you're not in a hurry, please fill in a few postcards. They're enormously valuable to us. Thank you very, very much indeed. And we have a mailing list.